Hello and welcome to Lion and Mouse Commentary. I'm Holland and this is my best friend Tori.
Hi.
If you're new to our show, we rank various forms of entertainment out of a total score of 10 with only 2 points allowed for our personal taste. Don't worry, we break down everything as we go. Feel free to agree, disagree, or just find something new to enjoy. Just be sure to tread lightly. There will be hot takes and spoilers. Cut to the intro.
Got a lot.
Yeah. Alrighty, so I'm gonna try and put my laptop over here this time. See if that mixing things up for you guys. Alright, so today, if you didn't know by the title, we are reviewing the album Red by Taylor Swift. I dressed for the occasion. So I have some information about this album if you've never heard of it or never listened to it. If you're new to our show, our album rankings are a little bit different. Have we done an album this season?
I
think this is our first
So.
album for this season. So if you're new to this season, we do score albums. We like music. We're big music fans, so we do include those in our commentary show. So I'll give you some backgrounds. There's no spoilers with this because, you know, it's music, so can't spoil a whole lot. But I do have some background information for you. Red is the fourth studio album by the American singer-songwriter Taylor Swift. It was released on October 22nd, 2012 by Big Machine Records. The original release includes 16 tracks with a total runtime of 65 minutes and 9 seconds, and the deluxe version includes an additional 6 tracks, 3 of which are acoustic or demo versions, for an additional runtime of 25 minutes. Taylor Swift's fourth studio album was written within 2 years. She wrote 30 songs during development of the album and produced them with Chapman within the first year, and then engaged other producers within the second year, including her Speak Now album tour. The Red Tour for this album ran from 2013 to 2014, which was a really long time ago. It's over 10 years ago. The album released 7 singles, and the singles We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together and I Knew You Were Trouble peaked at numbers 1 and 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and reached the top 10 on charts worldwide. Red topped the charts and received multi-platinum certifications in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. In the United States, it spent 7 weeks atop the Billboard 200 and made Swift the first artist since the Beatles to have 3 albums each with at least 6 weeks at number 1 on that chart.
Wow.
The Recording Industry Association of America certified the album 7 times platinum for surpassing 7 million album equivalent units. Red was nominated Album of the Year at the 2013 Country Music Association Awards and the 2013 Academy of Country Music Awards. At the 56 Grammy Awards in 2014, Red was also nominated for Album of the Year and Best Country Album. It won Favorite Country Album at the 2013 American Music Awards, Top Album and Top Country Album at the Billboard Music Awards in 2013, Top Selling Album at the 2013 Canadian Country Music Association Awards, and Top Selling International Album of the Year at the 2014 Country Music Awards of Australia. It's been certified 7 times platinum in the US with over 4.5 million albums sold. Many publications ranked this album among the best albums of the 2010s decade. It ranked within the upper tier of Swift's 11-album discography as of 2024 by publications like the Arizona Republic, the New York Times, Slant Magazine, and Spin. In 2023, Rolling Stone ranked Red at number 99 on its revised list of 500 greatest albums of all time.
Wow.
Following a 2019 dispute regarding the ownership of Swift's back catalog, she re-recorded the album and released it as Taylor's version in 2021. The album contains all 30 songs Swift recorded for the 2012 release of Red. So, that's just some information about the album, some accolades there, and we are going to get started into our first category.
Okay,
Go
so
for it.
with music, our first category is lyrics and writing. We allot 2 points for this. Real quick before I jump into this, I want to make the note that when me and Holland were deciding how we were going to prep for this, Holland decided to listen to the original recording, and I decided to listen to the Taylor's version recording. That being said, I did not listen to any of the deluxe or from the vault tracks in Taylor's version. I stopped with, what is that final song?
Begin Again.
Begin Again. That was the last song that
Yeah.
I used in the Taylor's version, because that's the last track in the original recorded album edition, I guess is the best way to describe that.
Yes. And on that note, I also listened to the original recording, so the 2012 release, and I did the same thing. I have heard all of the songs on the deluxe version, but I only counted in like the general categories of this album or of this scoring. I only included the original tracks.
So I say that because anything past the track Begin Again, if you are a fan of Taylor Swift or this album and you're familiar with that, if you're anticipating our thoughts on any track that comes after Begin Again in any deluxe edition or Taylor's version, we will not be discussing those tracks today.
Yeah, I included it in consideration of my creativity category.
That's fair then.
But I didn't include it in our broad categories.
Okay. So, that being said, first category is lyrics and writing. We allot 2 points for this, and I give this 1.5 points. So, not to like spoil a little bit about my personal taste and preference, but this is my favorite Taylor Swift album. And while I do not consider myself a Swiftie, I think I'm familiar enough with her discography, or at least her older albums, well enough that like I can sing along to even a number of the B-sides and stuff like that. So, out of all of the Taylor Swift albums that I consider myself familiar with, this one is my favorite. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the way that a lot of the writing is. We talked about this. We did the Speak Now album in the first season, I believe, of the podcast. Go listen to that one if you're interested. But I'm pretty sure I mentioned it there, but I think it's even more so in this album, is that Taylor Swift is admittedly very good at storytelling. And it's funny because like growing up, I always heard like people older than me, like older generations always being like, if you like storytelling in a song, nobody does it like Johnny Cash, or like people like that would be like name dropped. And I feel like of our generation of music, I would say Taylor Swift is among one of the best that can write a story in song format, and it makes it very memorable, and it does give a lot of emotional impact and weight. Now, I wasn't sure whether to talk about this in lyrics and writing or in album flow or cohesion, so I'm going to mention it in both places because I think it has enough to do with both. But there is a very, I think, cohesive theme overall to this album, with the exception of a couple tracks that break out of this. And that theme is like this almost like nostalgic looking on the past sort of theme. And it's either like, you know, remember when we did this and it was awesome and great and I have all these fond memories, or it's I'm looking back and, you know, realizing all of the regrets I have about our relationship or whatever it is. But it's a lot of looking back. It's not very present or future focused. There are some like allusions to that, but for the most part, it focuses very much on like a past tense of like perspective on things. And I guess you can always say, like, everybody, you know, the saying's been said for years and years and years, hindsight is 2020. And I think that makes itself very evident in a lot of Taylor's writings in regards to the songs. So, I think it's kind of sad. So there are some songs on this album that I'm not as familiar with as others. Let me pull up a track list actually real quick, because I don't want to look like a silly person. So there are some tracks that I feel like it's kind of sad that, in my opinion, some of the better written songs are kind of slept on compared to like the popular poppy hits. Mm-hmm. I guess it's just what happens though, especially in the realm of like pop music, is that of course the like catchy, fun, dancey tracks are gonna be the most popular ones, because for the most part, when you want to sit down and listen to pop music, you don't really want to listen to like a sad ballad unless you're in the mood for that kind of thing. But I wouldn't say that like the Billboard 100 is looking for sad tracks most of the time. It's going to be like those more upbeat, like focused songs. But songs like Treacherous and I Almost Do, I think are really beautifully written, and evoke a really great sense of like sort of the internal struggle of like knowing that something that's sad or hurtful that has happened to you needed to happen for the best outcome kind of thing. And it's really good, just kind of the whole encapsulated feeling of those songs. And yet those are two songs that I never hear anybody talk about.
Yeah.
Even like Swift fans that I know, you know, when you think of Red, you think of We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, and you think of I Knew We Were Trouble. And even songs like State of Grace and Red are much more popular than those. But I think that if you listen to this album, you'll be pleasantly surprised at just the nice word pictures that you get in a lot of those kind of slept on tracks. And yes, they're slower and they're more ballady. I like a good ballad. I'm not opposed to those things. I can understand why they're slept on, but I think that if you pay attention to them, it does increase the enjoyment of the overall lyrics and writing. I really like the track Red. I mean, obviously it's the track that the album is based off of, but I like the play that she did with color association, which is a concept that has existed in art for as long as art has existed. Color association is relevant in paintings and theater and film. I mean, drawing of any kind, like tactile arts. Color association is a relevant concept. And it's rare that you get color association in something auditory like music. And so I really like that sort of inclusion. It's taking a familiar art concept and adapting it to a medium that doesn't typically use it very much. And I really like that. You know, losing him was blue like I've never known. And missing him was dark gray all alone. These are colors that when you see them, they do evoke these emotions. Yeah. And so when you sing about them, now it's connecting it to like your auditory instead of just your visual. And I think that's cool. I did think it was very amusing that so many of these songs, and maybe it's just because she's Taylor Swift, but so many of these songs are about liking the bad guy and how the bad boys just didn't work out. And by the time it's like the fourth or fifth song that she's singing about her heartbreak from the bad boy, and I'm like, maybe you could change your type. You know? Yeah. So I found that kind of amusing. But at the same time, Taylor was in her early 20s when she wrote this, you know, late teens, early 20s when she wrote these songs. And it's just, we're all really dumb and when we're young like that. So
well, I think the Swiftie lore is that this album was written based on one relationship and one breakup. So the bad boy she's singing about is the same person throughout the album.
I actually went to Reddit while I was prepping this to look at this. And there are some Swiftie fans that are saying it's one person, and then there's some that are saying it's two. But the second person can't really be confirmed because while Taylor alluded to some things in a interview, the like timeline doesn't match up or something like that. And I was like, this is too deep in the lore.
I know, it's getting way too in the weeds.
I was like,
I think she has said it, she has kind of encapsulated it into one relationship, and it's like a breakup album of one relationship.
Gotcha. That would make sense.
But at the same time, I'm sure there are many things that she has drawn from in her life to compile these songs. Yeah.
So I just found that to be amusing that so many of these songs seem to kind of go back to the same, like, I knew that you were not good for me, but I tried anyway, and now I'm sad. And you're like, well,
yeah,
you know. I found something really interesting when I was listening to, actually before I dip into that, length of songs. I don't think any of these songs are so long to the point where I want to skip them or I tune out, but I do think some of them teeter on that mark.
The average is 4 minutes.
The average is 4 minutes, but there are a couple that are a little bit long. Primarily, I'm talking about All Too Well, and that's not even the 10-minute version.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit more about that song, and I'll probably get some Swiftie hate. But a lot of the songs are a little too long. The Last Time is also a little long. It's like right at 5 minutes. State of Grace is also long, but I forgive it a little bit more because it's a little bit more like anthem-y. So the time seems to move a little faster. Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, also quite long. It's approaching 5 minutes as well. Again, not necessarily downfalls, but when you are sitting down to listen to an album and all songs are over 4 or 4.5 minutes, it does take time just to get through it.
Yeah.
And so, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in album flow and cohesion, but it also makes the hills and valleys of your flow feel like it can be a little bit too much of a journey either way. So I just wanted to kind of touch on the length of songs there. But I also understand and acknowledge that she's a singer-songwriter, and that is going to happen in that sort of genre anyway. There are other singer-songwriters who write long songs as well. This is not, I think, unique to just Taylor Swift. Singer-songwriter types of music do tend to run a little bit longer than a very formulaic pop piece that's written by a group of producers that a singer just comes in and records and goes home. So like, I understand and acknowledge that. So I don't want to make it sound like it's some sort of big negative for me. As I was listening through, I didn't have any like super specific notes other than what I've said. However, when you get to Everything Has Changed, there is something very interesting that happens with the lyrical flow. I know basic music theory. I consider myself to be fairly smart, but I don't have any sort of like music degree. So y'all don't be coming at me. But what it felt like to me was lyrically, there's these rhythm changes that happen. So the song is in 4/4 time, which is pretty much your most run-of-the-mill time signature. But it almost felt like the lyrics switched from 4/4 rhythm to almost like this 8/4, so this double time swing rhythm, which is interesting because it's a sort of thing that you can see in like upbeat jazz songs or even rap music of all things, where somebody is singing in like swing or syncopated double time to your music's rhythm. And I just found that really interesting because I've listened to that song for a lot of years and never made that connection before.
Yeah.
But when it's happening primarily in the pre-chorus, I guess is where I would, I don't know how else to label that section, but the I just want to know you better know, that part. So it's like this weird like double time swing that I found really interesting. I think to kind of wrap up lyrics and writing, again, I don't have a ton to say, but I think the best summary of this feeling that the whole album could probably like rest under is the lyrics to the chorus of Starlight, when she sings like, "Oh my, what a marvelous tune. It was the best night. Never would forget how we moved." I think that in a way, I'm glad that that song comes so late in the album because it almost feels like a really nice like bow on the top of everything lyrically and musically, because I think no matter if you're a Taylor Swift fan or not, if you're coming in as a casual listener or like a hardcore fan, if you're listening to this album specifically, at some point you're going to go, wow, this is a really good tune. What a marvelous tune. Even if you're not physically saying or thinking those words, you're going to have a feeling like that at some point in this album. I truly believe it. Because I think that there's also enough, and I'll talk about this when we get to production, there's enough difference of like instrumentation to feel where this song doesn't feel too samey. The album, I mean, doesn't feel too samey all the way through. And so I just felt like that was a really nice kind of like almost end cap. It's like not quite the end cap. It's like if you have a bookshelf and you have bookends and the bookends are State of Grace and Begin Again, Starlight is the last book.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're reading through all of the books. This is the last book, and now we have the bookend. And I just thought it was really nice in that way. It seemed to summarize a lot of the whole general feeling of this album. So all of that to say, 1.5 points out of 2 for me.
Alrighty. I actually gave this category, lyrics and writing, a 2 out of 2, which I'm probably a little bit biased because I do really like a lot of Taylor Swift's older albums. Especially like Speak Now, Red, 1989, like those 3 albums, and then kind of like the surrounding pieces. Well, not really later, but earlier. I really do enjoy those albums a lot. And so this is like right in the middle, and I think it really is a good... The thing about the lyrics of this album, you touched on a lot of points that I would echo, but I think one thing it's important to remember when thinking about the lyrics of this album is Taylor Swift absolutely is a singer-songwriter. I think that is the style in which she writes, even though I think most people would say, if you look at Taylor Swift now, you'd say she's a pop star. Her songs musically may be pop, but it's still very singer-songwriter style in the way she writes. And this album was released as a country album. And I think the genre of music that has caught all of the singer-songwriters is the country genre. And so I think while this album feels more like country pop, or even into like transitioning into that pop, like pop rock kind of country pop rock blend, I think that lyrically it still feels very much like a country or like even a folk style of writing. And I think that a lot of the points you made, I think lyrically they're very, very strong. I think the lyrics all flow very well. They're very poetic. The pictures she paints with the words, like you mentioned in Red, even, State of Grace comes right out of the gun and kind of tells you what you're getting it set up for. But even the songs that may not be as lyrically strong as others, I think they still have a lot of depth to the way the words are composed together. It's very poetic. Yet they're still extremely easy to sing along to. And I think that blend is very, very difficult in modern music. You either have like the one end of the spectrum of a pop song, which is like the same 4 words in the chorus just repeated over and over and over again, and the verses are maybe like 4 phrases that are extremely elementary sounding. Or you have the other end of the spectrum, which I've heard some artists, I've tried to listen to some artists and get into it because they're in more of that folk music, country, genre, and it's like they've written a soliloquy and it sounds beautiful, but I can't sing along to it. Like I have to memorize a poem and then recite it to some background music for it to match what I'm hearing. And songs like Stay, 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 like, yeah, it sounds really like the chorus is really catchy and easy to pick up on, but then lyrically the verses are still have a lot of richness into the verses, which then leads you into this chorus that's easy to kind of pick up and sing along to. The rhyming patterns, I think, are done very well. I do think that we can't go back to 2012 and look at this album as if we're still in 2012. So I do think you can, with 2025 lens, looking back at this album, yeah, a lot of her rhyming patterns are very similar to, her song she writes now. I think I saw a meme one time and it was like Taylor Swift just loves rhyming bar and car together. And yeah, she does have a lot of songs where she just rhymes those two together. But I think the blend of this is telling a really cohesive story in the duration of, granted, it is a little long. I do agree with that. It is, a 4-minute song instead of a 3-minute song, 5-minute song. In that time frame, you're getting that full picture of the story. A couple specifics I had, I think State of Grace and Red are lyrically very strong. It has that pop feel, but it does have that complexity of a country song. I think Holy Ground also has a lot of complexity within the lyrics. But yet the verses and choruses are easy to pick up on and sing along to. It has that pop, like, and maybe this would fall more into production, but I think it fits even the way that the words come out of your mouth. It's very easy to, like, nothing feels like I'm having to, speak way too fast to get these words out, or the words don't fit together and they just feel awkward to say. Treacherous, I think that's a very well written song. It's not necessarily one of my favorites, but I think it's very interesting in that she says, this hope is treacherous and this daydream is dangerous. So she's talking about this relationship being a precarious place to be in, and then not an action is dangerous, but just the concept of hope and then the daydream of love is dangerous. And I think that's extremely deep if you really want to, like, pick into it, to have kind of abstract concepts be understood as being, a dangerous thing to do is pretty, it's way more complex than I think what is being presented in a lot of Taylor Swift's generation of music. In All Too Well, I think the 10-minute version now gets a lot of hype, but in the original version, I think that just the concept lyrically that I really like with that is she says, "You call me up again just to break me like a promise, so casually cruel in the name of being honest." But I think the fact of harming another person and breaking that as flippantly as one would break a promise, I think that's there's a huge, there's many layers of implications in "you call me up again just to break me like a promise." There's so many implications in the relationship of those two people that you could really analyze and dig down into. So those are just some examples of, I think, where lyrically Taylor Swift's lyrics, I think, especially in this time frame of her writing, I think they're just really slept on. I think you have a lot of really strong songwriting in this album. And because she was really young, it was kind of a country pop album, and she was starting to kind of break into the music scene and be seen as this, female pop icon, was kind of the start at this album. She wasn't taken seriously as a songwriter. And I think if this album, maybe not necessarily conceptually, but I think lyrically, if you just look at the lyrics alone, if this album was written by a 40-year-old woman and was released as like a, I don't know, maybe more like a Fleetwood Mac musical style, or even like Carole King or James Taylor, like the troubadour kind of folksy singer-songwriter style, I think it would have been taken way more seriously than it has been. So that's kind of the biggest reason I gave it 2 out of 2. Now, I don't think it's perfect. I think The Last Time is an extremely repetitive song lyrically. I think it's way too long. I think we get it. By the time you're halfway through the album, you're like, I get it. It's the last time I'm asking you this. I've put your name at the top of my list, or whatever they're saying. It's very dull. And I don't think, I'll mention it in production as well. I don't think that the music of it helps that song at all. I do think Sad, Beautiful, Tragic is also very, very repetitive. You get kind of bored if you're only listening to the lyrics and you're just taking away the music of it. I think lyrically it's very, very repetitive. And I think it really just lyrically, it sounds like a bathtub breakup song. Like you just lay in the tub and soak in your own misery and just like, not move because you're depressed. And that's valid, but I think that the song needed a little bit more to really be a great song. And I think it just is kind of like almost, I wouldn't say completely, but it feels kind of like a throwaway song on the album. 22, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together. I like how those are poppy, but they're really not overly repetitive. They are a little bit dated. 22 talks about dressing up like hipsters. I think that was definitely a 2012, early 2010s thing. It's not really a thing anymore.
Everybody just dresses like that now.
Right. That's just normal. Starlight, I think, is written really, really well. It's a very different song, but I think it's written very well. It tells a story, and yet again, it's still easy to sing along to. It's catchy. it has a nice like lyrical rhythm to it. Everything has changed. I think that song is pretty good. It risks being repetitive like the last time and Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, but it still works. I think the verses are unique enough and rhythmically it's lyrically done really well that it stays interesting. And then Begin Again, I think is a very well written song because it's a breakup song with this thread of hope through it. And I think that's also kind of a rarity in music, is that we realize that there's loss because, clearly you've broken up with somebody, but I get to begin again. Like love still has another chance. And it's in such a simple way. And I don't mean simple as in anybody could have written that song, but simple as in the concepts presented to the listener are pretty simple concepts. Like, and it's not anything like that this, man that she's singing about didn't do anything, crazy romantic, or he was just being himself and just creating that kind of like safe environment to watch and let love kind of begin again. I think it's I'll talk about this in Cohesion too, but I think it's a great ending of that song. So like we said, I'm not going to talk about any of the tracks after Begin Again. I'm going to kind of save any comments for like creativity, because I think that this album is already so long. If we spent going through all of those tracks, it would be a 5-hour podcast. Yeah. I did write some of the times down. So the original album is 16 tracks at about an hour and 4 minutes. The deluxe edition is 22 total tracks, and it's an hour and 30 minutes if you're going to listen through that. And then Taylor's version, the full version, is 2 hours and 10 minutes long at 30 tracks. So that's one reason when I kind of picked this category, Tori and I talked about it, to see what we wanted to do. And I was like, let's just do the standard version, the 16 tracks, because they're already really long. It's already an hour long album. So that's why we agreed we're going to save it. I know a lot of those songs have big, fan bases. I personally like a lot of those songs. I think they're great, but we're just going to really be talking about kind of the original version. So, but I still think lyrically, I think 2 out of 2. I think that it's not perfect, but I had to kind of look at it. I almost gave it a 1.5, but then when I look at the percentage of 16 tracks, there are only maybe 2 that I think lyrically aren't as strong, and 2 out of 16 doesn't warrant a 75% score for me. So that's why I gave it full points for lyrics.
That's fair. Okay, so the second category is singing/vocal ability. Out of 2 points, I gave this 1 point. Don't come at me. Okay. So I think Taylor Swift's voice is fine. It accomplishes everything that it is set out to do. She also writes for her vocal range. Fantastic. That's what you should do. But I don't think Taylor does a whole lot that really wows me vocally. She's not she does a lot. She does a lot of her own backing vocals, a lot of her own harmonies. She's sufficiently and adequately hitting everything she needs to hit. But there's nothing that like takes you by surprise while you're listening vocally. You're not like, oh my goodness, that was a crazy run, or like she just did this not so high deviation. Like you're not getting any like crazy wow moments like that.
I don't know if there are even any key changes.
I don't think there is.
I don't think there are.
I don't think so. So she does everything that she can do, but it does leave me wishing that like at least 1 or 2 tracks we had like a punch me in the face production moment in regards to her vocal ability. So the best way I can summarize the entire category here before I start getting into like specifics is I just want a little more from her. I just want a little more. It's like if I sat down and I eat a meal and it's just kind of bland and like I'm full, like I'm satisfied, but I wasn't wowed. There was nothing super interesting in the palette of vocal ability that I had here. Also, a few times I had to go to lyric versions of the like on YouTube of these songs, because there are a few times where her enunciation is not quite good enough for me to understand that first listen, or like if I'm not really locked in to understand what she's saying.
I've been listening to this album since 2012, and for this podcast, I pulled up Spotify and had the lyrics showing, which those are not always accurate. Yeah. So to be fair, but there were a couple words that I was like, I had no idea that's what she was saying.
Yeah. So I was like some of the, like background or echoey vocals toward the end of Red, I've been singing wrong for years. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, that's embarrassing. I thought she was saying this word. So I think that that's a little bit of a problem, especially if this is your lyrics, because you wrote this and then you got in a booth and you recorded it, and I still don't really know what you're saying. That is not, maybe I'm just too much of a stickler. Maybe I have too much theater kid energy.
No, and I also think that's a valid critique in the sense that Taylor Swift generally sings with pretty good diction. Like, she sings to be clear and be heard and understood. It's not like she has a style of her voice like, I don't know, like Van Morrison, who half the time you have no idea what he's saying because that's his vocal style.
It's not like listening to Nirvana where you're like, I'm just here for the vibes. Right. Because I don't understand anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a valid critique because Taylor Swift doesn't have a clear, distinct style that requires or allows or gives the impression that she has intention of being slightly unclear.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a note of that. Okay. So should I give my other negative note before I go into positives?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
This is going to be a hot take.
Oh.
I'm sorry in advance.
We warned you at the beginning.
I think the most dull song melody-wise. I wasn't sure whether to put this in production or singing ability because it has to do with the specific notes sung. Okay, so the melody line, the most dull song melody wise in this entire album is All Too Well. I'm sorry, but she sings the same melodic phrase over and over and over and over for 5.5 minutes. Yeah. And by the time I'm at about 2.5 minutes, I am a little bit bored. It's the lyrics are nice. She's telling a story. I know this song is super popular with the fans. That's why I know this is going to end up as a hot take. But if we're talking about the notes that she has chosen to sing, I know she has the capability to create more interesting melody. And it's just missing out of All Too Well. And so it feels like you are turning a page of a book and it's the same page printed again. And then you're turning the page of a book again and it's the same page printed again. And you're like, I'm in Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And the words she's saying are different. They're changing. But because there's barely any change to the notes, if you're not listening to the song, if it's just playing, if you're not locked in and like focused on the words she's saying, it's going to just go by in a slog because there's really no change and there's not much section changes either. All of the sections mirror the section before it. So there's not this like there's no interest to the ear.
Yeah.
There's just not. I'm sorry, but it doesn't exist. And that was my biggest problem with this entire section was how is a song that is so popular and so beloved by fans, in my opinion, the worst melody on this whole album. I'm sorry. Please don't come at me.
I also don't think that when this album came out, at least this is my take on somebody that was enjoying this media at the time of its release. I don't remember All Too Well getting any hype until Taylor's 10-minute version came out. Yeah. I don't recall.
I'm not in the Swift circles, so I don't really know.
Well, I just don't, I should say it never really got any press. It never, like in concerts and stuff, I don't think it got this huge, response. I think it really of course, again, we can't go back to 2012.
I guess I just assumed that this has always been a fan favorite because when we were lucky enough to go see Taylor on the Eras tour, and I don't know every song, but I knew a good majority of them, so I'm still having a good time. And then she starts the 10-minute version of All Too Well, and I'm looking around, and there are girls like, yeah! And girls like crying, and I was like, holy cow, this song means a lot to a lot of people. So I just made this assumption that people have just loved this song.
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember. I'll talk about this personal taste, but I don't remember in the original Red tour anybody having that reaction.
Okay.
To All Too Well. Everybody was like going ham over I Knew You Were Trouble, and
maybe it was a late bloomer favorite.
I really think it was the Taylor's version because I think all the Swifties felt like, this is my hot take, I think all the Swifties, which I am not one of, felt like, oh my gosh, we got the real version, because Taylor Swift came out and said when she originally wrote it, but it was 10 minutes long, so she had to cut the track short. Fair. Like, I'm glad she did. And then when she released Taylor's version, she was like, it's going to be the full 10-minute version. And the Swifties went wild because they were like, we got the real version. Yeah. And so I think that's why everybody's gone insane over the 10-minute version of All Too Well. I don't think it's because they have a lot of fondness for the original. I think they felt like they got an exclusive
when they got the
10-minute. Okay. But that's my opinion. So
okay. Well, I'll talk about a few happy things now, and then we'll move on. So, the second verse of I Knew You Were Trouble, not my favorite song, still a fun one. But the second verse has the most interesting harmonies in the whole album. There are some weird things that she's doing. She's hitting like the minor seventh in like some points. And like, I know this is probably just like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but you know, my nerd kid brain likes that kind of thing. And, I listened to like the Spotify version, and then I went and listened to it again because I like watching the music videos when we prep for music or like albums, because I like music videos, and so they do affect my perspective, I think, of some songs, because I like seeing what the like visual vision for that artist ended up being. So anyway, so I went and watched the music video after, which I'll talk about more in creativity because that's an odd video. But those harmonies are mixed to be louder in the music video than they are in the Spotify version. Don't know why they did that, but you can hear them better in the harmonies. Yep, in the music video than you can hear them in the Spotify version.
Huh. I did not know that.
Very interesting harmonies, though. If you've never listened to them, go listen to that song, go to the second verse, and just don't sing along. Just focus real hard on those harmonies, and you'll see some really interesting things happening. I think the best singing that Taylor does on this whole album, this is going to be a weird pick, I think it's Holy Ground. She does some really neat things. She switches from her head to chest voice quite a few times, which is not a super easy thing to do. You see it way more often in theater, musical theater. So for her to sing a song that has a very, you know, singer-songwriter vibe, but she sings it with almost a musical theater tone is very interesting. And I think it highlights a lot of what her vocal ability can be. And it changes the dynamic of different sections of the song. Those sections feel very distinct because of those switches that she makes. And I think it's probably the best job she does vocally in the whole album. This is not really a Taylor note, but I think it's worth talking about. I just like the way that Ed Sheeran's voice sounds with Taylor Swift's on Everything Has Changed.
Yeah.
I would not call myself an Ed Sheeran fan. I know basically his hits, and that's about it. I don't dive into his discography, but their voices blend so nicely on Everything Has Changed, and they do some really, really nice blending. It's the thing about singing with other people is that it's not just hitting the notes of the harmony properly. You also have to match other things, and it's why singing as a soloist in my opinion, is almost easier than singing in a group, because not only are you having to hit all of the notes of your part, your harmony part, correctly, but you also have to match things like dynamic and tone, like vowel sounds. If you sing a vowel sound a very different way than the person you're singing with sings a vowel sound, then there is a clash that happens there, and their voices seem to naturally adopt some of those same things, like the vowel sounds and dynamics and things like that. And I don't know if it was that one of them recorded first and then the other just went in and matched, because then that is a skill of its own. I don't know if they sang at the same time together. I don't know how the production happened. All I know is that the end result is really pleasing to hear.
Which is really interesting that you point that out, because Ed Sheeran is one of the, I am tempted to say few, but is one of the British musical artists that maintains his accent when he sings.
Yes.
So for their for their voices to blend with them having two very different accents is pretty impressive.
Now, she has another song on this album that features an artist I'm not very familiar with, but I know he's been around in music for a long time. I think it's The Last Time. Is that the song?
Yeah, it's Gary Lightfoot, and he's with Snow Patrol.
Yes, okay. On the opposite side of this coin, that's a good example of where I felt like their voices were not blending very well. He has a very, very distinct tone, and I don't think that that's a bad thing necessarily, but it is so different from Taylor's tone and neither of them seem to be really trying to match the other's tone, that one was harder for me to listen to. It was not as pleasing to my ear. I liked some of the lyrics of that song, but overall, like vocally, that one was much harder for me to listen to. I did not think it was a good match vocally. The last note I have, and then I'll move on. So, I've listened to the original version. That's the version that I probably listen to more generally. But I listened to the Taylor's version specifically to prep for this, and I noticed that I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that Taylor is, 12 years older than she was when she recorded these. But some of her tones are different. They're noticeably different. And the biggest noticing, or the song I noticed it the most on, and it made me kind of sad, was on Stay, Stay, Stay. Her vocals are so less peppy than they were. She's still singing all of the notes, but there's like less youthful bounce to it than there is in the original version, and it kind of made it like a lesser version to me, because I think that that's one song that like really has a lot of almost like whimsy to it. Like that's the best way I can describe it. And some of that whimsy seems to be gone in the Taylor's version. And even in the very end of that song, when there's like the spoken recording and she like laughs and then she says, "It's so fun," or whatever. It sounded like she was not having fun when she says it in the Taylor's version. And that was kind of sad to listen to. And I know that as we get older, our voices mature, and, there is some of that youth that just leaves it, and it's nothing that we can change or stop. But it was, out of all songs on this album, the most noticeable change vocally from her. So all of that to say, I still think she does everything she tries to do, but there is no wow factor. So 1 out of 2 points for me.
Alrighty. So for me, for singing and vocal ability, I gave this 1 out of 2 as well. Okay. So I don't think that you can objectively say that Taylor Swift has the strongest vocal ability. And I think that's okay. I think where she shines is her songwriting. And she writes, like you said, she writes for her own voice. And so she writes well enough that she doesn't write songs beyond her abilities. But also because of that, this age of Taylor Swift, she didn't have the same, wealth of vocal training, practice, songwriting, experimentation, so she outside influence even. So I think I'm not saying this as a blanket statement, but I think if you pulled up Taylor Swift's more recent albums, I mean, even, not the most recent, but just let's say her 3 most recent albums, I think she probably has better vocal ability on those albums than this album.
I agree.
In and of itself. But I think even comparing Taylor Swift to other female singers that are out there, she doesn't have the best voice. There are plenty of female singers where they shine is their vocal ability.
Yeah.
Now, they don't write their own songs. They don't produce their own music. All they do is sing. And because their voices are incredible, that's all they have to do. I think Taylor Swift, just objectively, and this is not a diss, because I think she focuses on her best talents, which is her songwriting. And I think she sings the best of her ability. But this album especially, it's still very early in her experience and her songwriting ability, her songwriting career, and her singing ability as well. I think her best, well, I wouldn't say best. I think Holy Ground is a great song in the original version, but I think her vocal ability is the best in the original recording in State of Grace. I think that's fair. Is one of her best.
That's a strong contender for me too.
Yeah, I think she sings extremely clearly. The quality of her voice is really good. Her tone is really good. She's able to hit, more impressive notes in that song. She hits higher notes than she does on other songs. I think overall, though, I wish there was a bit more variety in the vocals of this album. And I don't just mean Taylor Swift in her range of where she goes, but I mean in the harmonies of the song, in having, in Speak Now, and even in Taylor Swift's first album, so the 2, and Fearless, so the 3 albums that came before this one, she had, I think it's Nathan Chapman, her producer, sing on a couple of her songs. So
he sings on Treacherous, I believe.
Yes, he sings on Treacherous and All Too Well.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't look at the other ones he sings on. But because I think in All Too Well it fits really well narratively, but then it also adds a little fullness to the way the vocals sound on this album overall. And so I wish there was a little bit more of that. Not that there had to be a male's voice, front and center on every song, but I wish there was a little bit more richness in the harmonies. I wish there's a little bit more variety in backing vocals. A lot of the backing vocals are just Taylor Swift singing her own backing vocals,
yeah,
which is fine. A lot of artists do that, but then it does lend itself to have less richness of the sound. So that's another reason I didn't give it full points. I wish with Red, I think one of the problems I have with Red is if you listen in the bonus track of the demo version, there are way more harmonies and distinct harmonies in the demo version, and then the version that we have is lacking a lot of those harmonies. And I wish they were back in that track. I think there's a lot of room for good harmonies with that, and it would still fit. So those are that in addition to Taylor's ability herself, those are 2 really big reasons that I couldn't give this full points, because I think there's enough potential there. I think Nathan Chapman sings, or a male sings on Stay, Stay, Stay as well.
Yes.
I think for All Too Well, I think that vocally, very interestingly, it's singing about this really sad, heartbreaking breakup, and yet there's a little bit of triumph at the end. And I think if there wasn't a male vocalist on that, it would leave the song feeling very sad and depressing. It would be Sad, Beautiful, Tragic instead of All Too Well. I agree with what you said about Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran. I think they sound great. The last time, I think the vocals for it was Gary Lightbody. I'm sorry, I misspoke his name last time. Gary Lightbody, not Lightfoot. But he is the singer for Snow Patrol. I do think their voices don't blend, and I think that the vocals for The Last Time are so monotone throughout the whole song. It's just it's similar to kind of what you said about All Too Well. I think the vocals on The Last Time, that's
fair.
My opinion. I think the worst vocals are in The Last Time because it's just so monotonous through the whole thing. And and I'm not knocking him. I've never listened to a Snow Patrol song at all. But his singing, he starts the song as the lead like vocalist, and it sounds like he's just speaking, like singing. He doesn't sound like he's actually trying to sing a melody.
I'm just going to speculate because again, I'm also not familiar with Snow Patrol. I bet you his voice matches their kind of music.
Sure.
Super well.
Sure.
But then you transplant it into a Taylor Swift song and it just doesn't seem to go.
Right.
Like it just doesn't match.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels very odd. And I don't think it's required that Taylor Swift has to start every song, but it is also very unexpected. And I'll talk about this in album flow as well. It's very unexpected to be listening to Taylor Swift's album and then all of a sudden this man is singing to you. You're like, who is this? Where did this guy come from? And then Taylor Swift comes in.
And you're like, oh, you're still here.
She is here.
Yeah.
She is on this track. I thought she had like a guest track she gave to some random person. No offense, Gary, but...
You're not random. We just didn't expect you.
Yeah. One thing I heard in this song that I had never heard before was there are in Starlight, right after the bridge, there's like this instrumental after the bridge, and there are backing vocals in the back of that track. And I'd never heard it before. And I was like, oh, that sounds really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, I don't have a ton more to say. I think Taylor Swift does a solid job at what she does, and she should be commended for that. But at the same time, it's not the best vocals you ever... If I'm going to you were going to hear heaven on earth with this singer, this is not the album I'm going to pick, you know?
That's fair.
It's like when people think of a singer like that, they think of, I'm just picking a random first person that comes to mind. You think of like Josh Groban or Celine Dion.
Yeah.
You don't think of Taylor Swift. And so for that reason, I don't think I could ever really give Taylor Swift full points on vocal ability because she's just not the best singer. But she does really well. She does a great job. And I think that her voice fits the songs that she's written. And so I think that she does a great job. So 1 out of 2.
Okay, so the third category that we do for music is production. So this encapsulates quite a few things, so I'm just going to bullet point them for you real quick, but this includes things like the actual composition of the song, the musicality, the instrumentation, the mixing, that sort of thing, musician's ability, rhythm, those sorts of things. So that when we talk about production, we're talking less about the lyrics, less about the vocal. Now we're focusing on the music part of it and what that entails. So out of 2 possible points, I gave this 1.5. I think it's, again, a very solid album, but not perfect. First of all, I want to talk about the fact that, in my opinion, we've mentioned this before. I'm going to rehash it very briefly on music episodes. Me and Holland process music in different ways. We've discovered this about ourselves in our friendship. We discovered this years into our friendship. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a revelation. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's kind of a game changer for me when we listen to music together, knowing that we process it very differently. When Holland listens to music, and if I misspeak, please correct me. When Holland listens to music, the first thing her brain focuses on are the lyrics and the vocals. When I listen to music, the first thing my brain focuses on is the music. I have to listen to a song usually 2 or 3 times before, unless it's like super catchy. And then of course I'm going to catch the melody or the melody and the lyrics pretty quick. Like if it's really repetitive and catchy, like of course I'll catch on. But if it's like an artist like Taylor Swift, where a lot of her lyrics are very intentionally written, I'm not going to catch them all the first time. I'm just not. Because I'm listening to the music. And then the next time I listen, then I'll split my brain a little bit and I'll start to pay attention to the lyrics a little bit more. But I'm not going to catch it. So when I listen to music, the production is the first thing that my brain hears. It's the first thing that I'm listening to. That's just kind of a very basic umbrella so that as I jump into this, you understand that these are the things that my brain hears first. So the categories we've already talked about, those are the things that I have to take more effort to listen to. That's kind of where I'm going with the whole point.
This is your wheelhouse.
Yes. But I believe that music holds emotional weight. Maybe not as much as your lyrics do, but I think it certainly helps deliver the emotion of a track when the music reflects the emotion of your singer and lyrics.
No, I think that's essential.
Yeah.
I think that's essential. I think that's just the way the human mind works. If your lyrics were only carrying it, then everyone would just read poetry.
Right. That's very true. So, I think that this album in general does a really, really good job of musically and instrumentally matching the emotional weight of whatever is going on. There are some groups and even genres out there where I feel like they do a lot of switch ups. Yeah. I would say this is very popular in pop punk, where your lyrics are heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, but we're dancing because it's super fun and it's upbeat.
I was just about to say, like, they're like Hard Times by Paramore.
Yeah.
It's a very sad lyrically. Mm-hmm. Like, you're singing about hard times and make you want to cry.
Why do you even try?
Why do you even try? And yet it's like a bop.
Yeah. And so I think in some instances that can be great. But in a singer-songwriter capacity like this, not to say that other bands are not also involved in their songwriting, but in a kind of album like this, it really helps deliver the message when your music reflects that emotional weight. And the instrumentation does that a lot. Just overall, I think from start to finish in this album, the instrumentation does that really well. I think there's a great start to the album with the song State of Grace. It has a very clear anthem, rhythmic momentum that runs, and it's a great start, and it catapults you without feeling like you're being rushed or pushed. It's a nice start to the momentum for the whole album, and I think it's really, really nice to start there. I can't think of a better song in this whole track list that would have been a better start to the album than State of Grace, personally. We kind of keep on that momentum with Red, and I'm not trying to talk album flow cohesion. I know it kind of seems like I am, but what I want to talk about is that you have these change-ups, these like sectional change-ups in the production, where all of a sudden it now feels like a breath of fresh air. I think that happens when we get to the song Treacherous. There's something really, really lovely about that song is very simple as far as musically goes. The entire momentum is driven by an acoustic guitar and very, very basic percussion. And what happens is because you have this really nice acoustic guitar and the percussion is not overpowering anything, but it's still there, it's still present, it's not lost. But now it's really easy for you to shift your focus over to the vocals and the lyrics, because now the music is like, okay, this is not about us anymore. And so the production does this very interesting thing throughout the whole album where it kind of steps forward when it's like, yeah, now it's time to jam. Now it's time to party a little bit. When we get to, let me pull this track list up again. By the time we get past Treacherous into I Knew You Were Trouble, we're jamming again. Now we're listening to the nice electric guitar. We've got some really crazy synth going on in I Knew You Were Trouble. And so now we're jamming again. And it's cool because that song lyrically is more repetitive than the last three that we've had. And so we have enough of these change-ups where each song comes along and now the focus might shift a little bit. Like what does this production team, Taylor Swift and her team, what do they want you to focus on? And the production matches whatever that is, whatever they've chosen. And it makes it very evident without feeling like you're being pushed or shoved into any sort of like particular mind space, your ear just naturally does it as you go on. And I just think it's really nice to see. I think that some of the more popular songs, so like 22 and We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, I have nothing against those songs. They're fun. They're pop. But I noticed that internally within the song, they have these sections that are really famous, you know. We are never, ever, ever. You go talk to your friends. And so you have these sections, and they don't really nicely flow into the next section of the song. I don't know if it's the nature of the song, as in they're a little bit more carefree, kind of like, I don't care what you think. I'm feeling good about myself today. And those are fine tracks to have. I'm not trying to like say that the problem with them is that they are a little bit more I'm doing okay today vibes instead of I'm feeling really sad and nostalgic kind of vibes, which a lot of the album does focus in that kind of vibe. But I think the transitions between sections in those songs don't quite feel as smooth. It's almost like if you've been reading a letter in cursive, you know, and you get used to that sort of like all the letters are nicely connected. And then you flip the page in the same book and now you're reading a page in typewriter font. There's nothing inherently wrong about that. It just feels different compared to all the other pages that you've gone through at this point. So again, not necessarily a negative, but just something that I noticed about those two songs in particular. We talked about the last time a little bit in the last section about how neither of us really care for it as far as vocally. I wanted to touch about how I think the song would be better if you pulled all the vocals out and just listened to the music. Because the instrumentation of that song is actually pretty interesting. And it has a lot of really good dynamic shifts in regards to like different instruments becoming louder in different sections. Almost like it's like their moment to shine. It just unfortunately gets lost in the vocals that your brain is having a really hard time like accepting because of how odd they sound and how they don't blend, which again we talked about. But it's unfortunate because I think the instrumentation is really nice and it just is completely lost in that song. So if you have a karaoke track available, it's probably a better version to listen to.
Wow.
Sorry, that's harsh. I don't have a ton left to say other than I just, I really think it's just nice to see the production of an album really feel as intentional as the lyrics and writing. I think depending on the artist, one usually shines over the other. And in Taylor Swift in general, if I'm talking outside of the Red album, I would say that for me personally, a lot of the musicality and production of her other albums they don't hold up as well as her writing, in my opinion. And it's part of the reason that I don't consider myself a stronger fan of her, is because while I appreciate a lot of her lyrics and writing, I think it's across the board really strong. A lot of the times I'm like, I'm just not feeling this song a lot of the time. But this album in particular, I feel like just really hits that sweet spot for me in regards to all of the musicality and production feeling as intentional as the writing, instead of the writing always taking the driver's seat. This one, it felt a lot more like a nice partnership between those two aspects of music, which are, in my opinion, the two biggest aspects of music. So this is the album that I feel like with Taylor Swift, it felt the most hand in hand instead of we have a driver and a follower now. And one last thing I wanted to mention, maybe ask your opinion since you're a little deeper into the Swift lore than I am.
Well, here and there.
Yeah. So the melody of The Lucky One, it is I went back and listened to make sure I wasn't going crazy. It echoes a lot of repeated melody phrases in the song Untouchable from her Fearless album. I don't know if it's intentional or not.
Yeah.
But there are these sections of, 6 to 8 notes. It's nothing crazy. But Okay, so you know how like in Hamilton, we've talked about Hamilton. When Hamilton repeats a phrase or a melodic phrase, it's on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it signifies an emotion or a character or something. Like there's always it's always on purpose. I know these are two different albums and there's an album that came between the two, but it makes me wonder if it was purposeful echoing back to Untouchable. Now, do the songs feel like two siblings? Not necessarily in regards to content, but musically they felt really close. In kind of a nice way, I thought. Not in a way that I was like, oh wow, I've heard this before. But in a way that I was like, I've heard this before.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go back and I was like, yeah, this is the same melodic phrase that came out of Untouchable. So again, I don't know if it's purposeful or not, but it was noticeable enough for me to make note of it. So 1 point out of 2 for production.
Okay. No, I haven't heard anything about those songs being somehow connected. On the one hand, I think it could be similar to how, like, Owl City has melodic repeats. Yeah, many times. Mm-hmm. It could just be coincidental, but I think a lot of Swifties would say that Taylor Swift puts all these like Easter eggs and like there's meaning in everything and like you have to read into like the weeds of everything. They probably would say that, oh no, it was purposeful and what's the connection? Get their little string map out. I don't think I would say that. I think this is early enough in her career that it probably was just coincidental, but I don't know. I've never heard anything about them being connected.
Okay.
So all right, so for me, for production, I also gave this 1.5 points out of 2. I do think, in general, the construction of the songs, and I didn't count this in lyrics, so I'm not talking about lyrically the way they're written, but just the structure of the songs are very like verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. It's very, very formulaic. There really aren't any songs that I can think of except maybe All Too Well. But even then, it still follows that same formula. I can't really think of any songs on this album that deviate from that very traditional, like, basic song composure. Yeah. And that's not necessarily a negative, because the reason it's a formula is because it works. And it's what I think most people expect. They expect to go to the verse, to the chorus, and then have another verse, and then we'll go back to the chorus again so I can sing along, and then we'll do the bridge, and then we'll do the chorus again. And yeah, I mean, that's what most people want when they listen to music. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a negative, but I do think it overall makes the album pretty repetitive as far as each song just follows the same formula. I agree with a lot of like your points, so I'm not going to rehash those. I do think State of Grace is a great opener. Production-wise, I think the drums and the guitar just come in and they set up the musical tone of the album. It's very, very different from Speak Now and Fearless. Those were very country styled, and this is very like country rock pop, like blend of those. And I think that it does a great job of setting this up. The backing vocals in State of Grace and the echoes behind that last chorus in State of Grace, I really, really like. I do think we do have a good amount of musical variety across the album. The banjo in Red, and then the banjo again in We Are Never Getting Back Together. The I Knew You Were Trouble has this like dubstep feel, which could come across as being really dated because dubstep has kind of fallen out of vogue in popular music, like pop music. But it still fits. Like, it feels like it fits. The ukulele that comes through in Stay, 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 the drums in the Lucky One are very, like, formulaic, like the intro to Hannah Montana, like, very basic drum beat, but it works. It's still flows throughout the song and gives it that nice feel. I did think something was really interesting. So when I prep for musical albums, I listen to it on Spotify, which I know is a digital media platform, so the quality of the music is not necessarily as good as if you were listening to like a vinyl. But I always listen to it with a wired headphone because audio quality is better than like a Bluetooth audio. So I have really like beefy headphones and I always plug the jack in. And so I have left and right audio. In the All Too Well and in Stay, Say, Say. For All Too Well, the electric guitar, and in Stay, Say, Say, the ukulele only come out of the left ear.
Interesting.
And I don't know if that's just Spotify or if that's how it was originally mixed. But I thought it was really interesting. And on the one hand, I think some listeners could find it distracting, but I personally thought that it helped highlight that electric guitar in All Too Well that's playing this really, smooth, finger picking. And then the ukulele in Stay, Say, Say is really prominent, but it's only in the left. So I felt like it highlighted those two instruments more to kind of give you a little bit more like roundness to the song, I guess you could say. Again, it's not a negative. I just think it was really interesting. I had never heard that before because I've always just listened to it like in my car or like in like earbuds. Never really paid attention to that. I do think though in some kind of negative, the last time, Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, and the fact that the drums in the Lucky One, even though they do fit, it's like the most basic drum beat you could have. And I think musically, Sad, Beautiful, Tragic is extremely dull. I think, kind of what you said with All Too Well, it's like the same thing musically through the entire song. There's not really a lot of variety there as far as the melody goes. And then the last time, I think musically, I think on the one hand, the production of it is okay, but I'm talking about like the notes that they're singing, I think are extremely dull in that song as well. And I think to me, the mixing of their vocals it sounds like it just clashes. And I think part of that is what you mentioned about the way that the tone of their voices just generally mesh. But I also think the mixing is kind of crummy because you can't tell who's supposed to be singing lead. It's almost like they're mixing the exact same intensity, and it makes it really hard to listen to, especially when they kind of get the part of the song where it's like building and then it goes into the very last chorus and the instruments are like building this crescendo and their voices are like rising. It's just like, oh my gosh, I feel like we're about to have an explosion and not this like crescendo of a moment we're supposed to be like letting our emotions kind of build. So I really don't like that song anyways. And then I'll end with a positive. I do really like that Begin Again kind of pulls back to Taylor Swift's kind of country roots. Like we have the banjos like woven through a couple songs here and there, but I really think Begin Again is a nice like bow at the end of the present where we really get back into that country feel with that nice steel guitar. There's a nice mandolin playing, it's we've kind of pulled back on to more of an acoustic feel, and it just kind of, we start with State of Grace and then we just kind of like smooth down into Begin Again towards at the end of the song. So overall, I think the production's really done well. I like the variety of musical styles in the album, but yet they all still feel like they belong on the same album, which we'll talk about in the next category. So I won't get into that as well, but I didn't think it was perfect. So 1.5 out of 2.
Okay. So our fourth category for music is album flow / cohesion. We allot 1 point for this. I gave this 0.5 point. I think generally all of the songs do fit the overall theme pretty well. I talked about this a little bit at the beginning, where this theme feels like this reminiscence, nostalgia, kind of longing for the past or wishing things had been different, that kind of feel. And generally all of the songs, with very few exceptions, I think the exception is probably 22, That's like the only song that's very present focused. Everything else is very past focused. So I think there's a good bit of consistency in that. I do think that there is a little bit of flow problems. And it happens for me the first time. There's a dip in my focus when we hit All Too Well. That's only track 5. And I know it's probably because of the criticisms I have for that song anyway. But I really I don't mind Treacherous. I don't mind I Almost Do. The last time, again, is a little difficult for all of the reasons that we've mentioned. So I feel a little bit of a dip there in regards to the flow. And by the time we hit Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, I want to talk about Sad, Beautiful, Tragic here for a second. I don't think it's a bad song. It's written fine, but it is very redundant. To me, it feels like I Almost Do Part 2. There's so much about those two songs that are very similar that while independently, and I think if they were on different albums or farther apart, it would have been better. But because they're only, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're only 5 tracks apart in a 16-track span. By the time I'm listening to Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, I'm like, I listened to this song a few minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. I already listened to this song. And they feel a little too similar to the point where when I say dips, I'm not talking about dips in energy, because I think dips in energy are necessary so that you don't get burned out on a bunch of crazy high energy. Like, you need to have energy dips, but you should never have focus dips, I think, in an album. And for me, when it happened 3 times, by the time I hit the final number, I was like, okay, it's a little bit of a flow problem. Again, I think any of those songs, take it or leave it. One of those songs might be your favorite Taylor Swift song, and I'm not trying to necessarily knock any of those songs, but I do think that where they're placed and the length of them and all the other things that we've talked about in regards to those tracks lend themselves to a little bit of like a brain tune out in those moments. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. I don't have much more notes other than I thought that it was fine, but not fantastic. So that's why I gave it half credit and gave it half a point out of 1.
Okay. I actually give this a whole point for album flow and cohesion. Oh. I do think, on the one hand, I can see your point, and I do think you could have some flow issues, but I think there's more weight to be given in the cohesiveness of this album.
Okay.
I think the fact that you have a lot of different musical styles, and yet they all feel like they fit on this album. I think thematically, the songs fit really well and mesh really well together on this album. I think the bookends of State of Grace and Begin Again as your start and finish, I think it's a great beginning and end of the album, as well as thematic bookends to encapsulate the rest of the songs on the album. I think that there's good balance between like you said, the dips in energy. I think it's really nice that we kind of pair some high energy songs together, and then we slow down for a little bit, then we get back up, and then we slow down, and yet none of those transitions ever feels super jarring. And yet they also kind of cohesively tell a story across the board. So I think, like, for example, the first 5 tracks really is storytelling of the highs and lows of love and a breakup. So you start with State of Grace. It's like 2 people meeting. Loving Him was Red in track 2. And then track 3, I think, is Treacherous.
Yeah.
Track 4 is...
I can tell you.
Which one?
I Knew You Were Trouble.
Yep, I Knew You Were Trouble. And then track 5 is All Too Well. And so we've literally watched, from one person's mind, watched the beginning of almost not really a love at first sight, but at meeting, and then this kind of explosive rush of love. I knew it wasn't a good start. I knew it was going to be trouble. This hope is treacherous. I knew you were trouble. And now I remember it all too well. Like, it fell all apart. And then track 6 we've had the breakup track 6, now it's 22. Okay, you know what? We've had a breakup, and you know what? Let's just go. We're happy, free, confused, and lonely at the same time. Like, let's go out with our friends and just enjoy life, because there is life after a breakup. So I think just those first 6 tracks are done. They really have a cohesive story that are told.
I would say you could even continue and say I Almost Do is where you start to feel the regret. Like, did I make the right decision in having this breakup? And then you solidify that with the next track. We are never ever getting back together.
Right.
So I would agree. I would say that
it tells a narrative,
not just within the track, but within the arrangement of tracks.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And so I think, so we've gone through, so 6 is 22, and then I Almost Do is 7, and then 8 is
We Are Never
Ever Getting Back Together. So half the album tells this narrative, and you can listen to the first half. Now it does mix in some songs that don't necessarily feel like they fit the linear story that we've just kind of connected dots, but they still fit the cohesive theme of what love is like. The Lucky One feels a little thematically different, but Starlight is a really great love song. Mm-hmm. That's a great love song. It sounds more like thematically and lyrically it's singing about, you know, like it opens with I'm a Barbie on the boardwalk summer of 45, so it's clearly not her that's experiencing this, but like this is like a really great like classic timeless love story that's being told. And so it's almost like thematically you could fit it in the album that, you know, when you're looking back at your own maybe romantic life, you compare it to these kind of wild storms of what, you know, this picture perfect love of an era gone by. And, you know, that's not necessarily it's an idealized picture of love. It may not necessarily be the full picture, but that's kind of what a lot of people want when they're thinking about their own relationships too. So I think thematically, it's a really, really good album. There aren't any songs. There are maybe a few songs that I don't like, but I don't think I can genuinely say this shouldn't be on this album. This should be on Speak Now, or this should be on 1989. This just doesn't fit. She should have saved it for a different album. And so for that reason, I really had to give it full points. It's not perfect. There are, I think, The Lucky One and Starlight, they're very interesting pieces. They don't necessarily feel like they fit completely. And then, but I do think they still fit the overall theme. And then I think when you come into the end with Begin Again, it's, you know, we're looking up after a huge like plane crash of love. And it's like, you know what? On a Wednesday in a cafe, which is normal life, I watched it begin again. And so it's not necessarily like this train wreck's beginning again. The like emotion you feel in that is, you know, I had this love that really wasn't the best situation anyways. And so I'm watching love begin again with somebody that might value and appreciate me and love me in a better way than all of this. Even though we had good times and we had, you know, loving him was red. It was, you know, his love was like driving a new Maserati down a dead end street. Like that's wild and fun and crazy. And, you know, so, but I think that at the end, especially, we kind of get this, you know, not every love is the same. It kind of turns a corner, and this love is going to be different than the last one because people are different and you're different when you come through that situation. So overall, I think it's just a really intellectually, this album was put together with a lot of thought, and it was intentionally selected in the order of the songs and the themes of the songs. And so for that, I gave it full points, because I think there's a lot of albums that try to have a theme that there's maybe one song or two songs on maybe a 12-track album that you're like, I don't know why that song's on there. It's just kind of a weird song. Like, I mean, it's fun, but it's just kind of weird. And I think you can argue for every single one of these songs fitting on this album. So that's why I gave it full points.
Okay, fair enough. All right, 5th category, second from last for music, is personal taste and preference. 2 points allowed. I gave this 1.5 points.
Wow.
I had to think about it because while, you know, I mentioned this briefly, but like I don't consider myself like a huge Taylor Swift, there are lots of songs of hers that are skips for me, just like in her overall discography. But I have more songs from this album saved in my playlist than any other of her other albums. So I would consider this my favorite album of hers. State of Grace is my favorite Taylor Swift song in general. Just I like every aspect of that song. Vocals, writing, music, all of that. It's also one of the most fun songs to sing, I think, in her discography. So I don't have a lot to say other than I just really like this one, especially compared to her discography as a whole. Like when I think like, oh, what are some of your favorite Swift songs? Like a lot of them come from this album, like a good majority of them. So because of that, you know, I'm not listening to it every day on repeat. I'm not listening to every song, so I'm not going to give it 2 out of 2 points. Pretty close. I mean, a lot of these songs I listen to consistently enough and exist in multiple playlists. Like I got a playlist for driving around town. I got a playlist for work. Like a lot of these songs are in multiple playlists of mine. They're not just like condensed to just one little pocket of things. So because of that, 1.5 points out of 2.
Alrighty. So for personal taste and preference, I gave this 2 out of 2 points.
Not surprised.
Not really a surprise to Tori. I really like this album. It holds a special place in my heart. I was able to see the tour with my brother in 2013, and we even had pit tickets. And this was right before Taylor Swift tickets became impossible to get. So this album has a special place in my musical history. I bought the CD at Target when it dropped and listened to it driving around in my mom's minivan in the CD player. And it also came out right before Tori and I became friends. So I forced it on her in the early days of our friendship. And so I
remember that first summer. It was all we listened to.
So it does. A lot of these songs do remind me of Tori. I required her to listen to all of the songs. And I think I played 22 every time we were together for the whole year that she was 22. So I love this album. There are songs that I do skip, to be fair. You know, I think we're all entitled to that, but this
is
really
anybody listening to The Last Time? Maybe you.
Drop it in the comments. Let me know. I want to know if you're out there.
Because we're not.
or Sad, Beautiful, Tragic. Are you listening to that song? Drop it in the comments. I want to know.
We want to know if anybody is out there and like, that's my favorite Taylor Swift song. Your favorite
Taylor Swift song on, just, you don't have to be of all time, just on this album. If your favorite song is Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, I will send you a fan mail sticker. Like, you have to let me know.
Don't lie. Be honest.
Be honest. So, a fan sticker. We have Line and Mouse stickers for our fan club members. I will send you one if you will... honestly
send us your Spotify stats.
Yes. Yeah, we need the plays. We need the plays. Yeah, so go ahead.
Okay, last category. Well, we said that at the same time. Haha. Last category for everything is creativity. So we allow 1 point for this. And I gave this a full point because
I'm
I have to say, I think that this album, if we're going to look at Taylor Swift's career from an eagle eye, let's look at the whole timeline. My personal perspective of Taylor Swift's musical career, the highlight, the peak, I think is this album, personally. Numbers and sales may say different, and that's okay. I'm talking about creatively. I think this album is a good indication that Taylor had made it. At this point, she's made it. Like, this album came out, and everybody knew who Taylor Swift was at this point. Everybody knows who Taylor Swift is by the time that Red has come out. And this album...
More than just, like, 14-year-old girls and their moms.
Right. Taylor Swift was an international name by the time that this song came out. Or this album came out. And this album still has a long-lasting effect and shows Taylor's influence on the music industry from not just a US standpoint, but a genre standpoint, an international standpoint. People from all over the world know the name Taylor Swift. All over the world. When she did her Eras tour, and that tour took her two years almost, because of her international influence and the demand and possibility that she could go anywhere in the world and sell out a stadium because her influence has become so large. And while I know that there are probably albums other than Red in her discography that have done better numbers overall in regards to sales and things, I think this album marks the fact that, like, if she got it to here, she was cruising at this point, and she made it. So, I mean, you read a whole bunch of stats at the beginning about all of the accolades, and she's still consistently hitting numbers that of that caliber, even in her albums today, that she's her more modern and more recent albums. But I think that if you were to look creatively, this is the album that, to me, in my personal perspective, it feels like the best encapsulation of Taylor Swift as this sort of small town girl who just tried to make it. And this album kind of feels like that highlight, that point right there.
Like, she did make it.
She did.
Yeah.
At this point, she's made it.
You know, I think that's a really good point, because I was going to rebut your point a little bit, because statistically, 1989 really was Taylor Swift's biggest success. And I think a lot of people would still consider that her best album.
Sure.
Of all time.
And I think it's a good album.
But I think that Taylor Swift's 1989 sales were so good because this album put her on the map.
That's what I'm saying, is I think that
her albums today sell so well because of the Taylor Swift fans, and this album sold so well on its own feet as an album.
I would say that the majority of the strongest Swifties, if you will, those are going to be people that have been with Taylor since the beginning, with her self-titled album, which is a good album and did well.
Actually, that's not that true anymore.
Really?
Most of this, like, I've seen, at least on social media, I would say, I think there are a lot of Swifties that have been with her since album 1, or at least Fearless. But a large number of the Swifties that are, like, going to the Eras Tour concerts and all this stuff, they started listening to her with 1989 and Reputation, actually. Okay. And that's a lot of people don't even know her discography before Reputation.
Well, then let me give this perspective then. If not for the Taylor Swift fans in these early days, so I'm talking her self-titled album, Fearless, Speak Now, and Red. If not for those fans, would Taylor Swift have the career today that she has had?
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
And so with Red being that album where I think it went from I'm a Taylor Swift fan to everybody knows Taylor Swift, this is the era that happened in my personal perspective. Yeah. And so because of that, I really wanted to give it full creativity points. It is iconic. It was a milestone, I think, of her career. I think that Taylor Swift owes a lot of her lasting influence to these early albums, and this one in particular. I think a lot of the I guess big title tracks from this album are still incredibly popular. The music video for We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together is approaching 1 billion views on YouTube, which,
you know, that whole music video is done in one take.
Yep, I wanted to talk about that too. So that's a good segue, I guess. Since I talked about how I like music videos, I like to watch music videos. They're really important to me. Always have been. I don't know why. I can't really explain that to you, but I did watch the music videos that all exist for this album. The ones that I did not watch were the ones that were just like videos of a stage or concert performance of the song. I watched all of the music videos that were story-based, I guess you could say. And the two I want to talk about are We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, which was done in one take. Incredible feat for anything. It's an incredible feat for a 60-second scene in a movie, but for a 3.5 minute, I cannot imagine how much rehearsal went into that. And not just rehearsal of your actors, but rehearsal of your crew. You're moving set pieces and walls and furniture in and out, off right off of frame, not just like now the camera's over here so you have all this stuff. Things were happening like directly off of frame. I can't imagine how many times they had to do it or how long that took. That'd be a behind the scenes video I'd be down to see, because that kind of coordination is really difficult when you have so many people and so many moving parts, but they pulled it off so well. And it almost doesn't feel like one take. It's not until you consciously realize we haven't cut at all that it starts to really become impressive. The other thing I want to talk about, I Knew You Were Trouble has a really odd video. Have you seen this video?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first like minute of this video is like Taylor Swift waking up in a desert and she's like dirty and like crumpled, and you're like, wow, this feels like a post-apocalyptic adventure movie all of a sudden. And then she's like walking and there's like all this like dramatic like orchestration, and then all of a sudden it's like bring, and you're like, what the heck? The tone shift was so odd to me that it felt almost like the music video part, like the music part felt like a parody.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I'm watching, and like the song's not bad, but it just felt like two scenes from two completely different things, and the tone shift was just crazy wild for me. So I didn't dislike the video, but it just didn't feel like a music video for that song.
Yeah.
I don't know. Something about it was not super cohesive for me. I felt like the album is more cohesive than that one singular music video. Anyway, all of that to say, still 1 out of 1 point for creativity.
Alrighty. I also gave this full points for creativity for a lot of the reasons you said. I think also considering that there is the original album, there's a deluxe version of the album, and now there's Taylor's version of the album. I think the fact that there is Taylor's version of the album shows that there's still interest in this album, even, all these years later. I think, kind of like what you were saying, I do think that we kind of talked about it a little bit, but the point I want to make is I think that 1989 era began Taylor Swift being known and successful for being Taylor Swift. And this album spoke for itself. And she was featured on the Rolling Stones magazine cover. She was, featured in different ads for things, like, because her music was successful. It wasn't because I'm Taylor Swift and here's my album. It was like, have you ever heard this album? It's Taylor Swift. Like, people were introduced to Taylor Swift through this album. And I think that not that her music is bad by any means now, but I think that if Taylor Swift released an album of her reading the phone book, people would buy it because it's Taylor Swift.
Right.
They wouldn't buy it because it's a great album about somebody reading the phone book. This album, people bought it because they liked her music.
Yeah.
And then she became like Taylor Swift. And I think that this was the beginning of her reaching a widespread audience, and that catapulted her into the success of 1989, which was really when she transitioned completely out of country and straight into pop. It was because this album gave her the ability to do that. If this album hadn't been successful, she might still be just writing country music or, a quote unquote washed up pop star, because she didn't have the appeal to a more widespread audience. So I think it's also an iconic beginning of Taylor Swift's style that blends pop and country and like pop and singer-songwriter together. Some of her more recent albums, there are albums that she's released more recently that don't have that high energy pop feel to them, but this sound on this album is what you're looking for when you want to listen to Taylor Swift. And I think this is really the beginning of her singer-songwriter style, lyric style, with the instrumentation of more of a rock pop sound. So I think that also makes it a milestone for her career as well. And then I think that it's still a very well-performing album, and some of her most well-known songs and singles are off this album. And it's well-known even, 13 years later in 2025. People still know all the songs from the Red album because I think they're just really good songs. I think it's just a very well-done album. I think, just in general, I think it's just done really, really well. And I think it's a momentous album for Taylor Swift. And I think it's also I mean, this might be a really big, bold statement, but I would say in our generation, I think it's a very impressive moment for musical artists in our generation that a female singer-songwriter musician can release her own music and be taken seriously in the music industry in a mainstream field. And I'm not saying that there aren't very successful female artists, that there are, because there have been for generations, and there will continue to be long after Taylor Swift is dead. But the fact that our generation didn't really have a female kind of popular pop artist that wrote her own music, released her own music, and was taken seriously from the music industry. I mean, you can argue there are plenty of successful female artists, like, you know, Britney Spears for one, super successful, but I don't think she's ever been taken seriously as a songwriter the way that I think Taylor Swift is now. So again, I'm not saying that, you know, Taylor Swift was anything groundbreaking in the music industry, but I think it was a nice moment. This album really catapulted a female singer-songwriter who wrote about her own personal life and not just general pop songs to appeal to the masses, who kind of published her diary in music form and was able to get success from that. I personally, maybe you can think of somebody that had that, you know.
Not anybody who's had a lasting effect like her.
Right, but or anybody in like our from like the, you know, 80s until present day. Like, I can't think of anybody that has, from a songwriting and musical performing standpoint.
Not from a soloist standpoint, I don't think.
Yeah. I think before Taylor Swift, you know, most of the female artists that had like widespread success were people like Carole King, you know, Stevie Nicks. I mean, there were a lot of female artists that were successful, but I think there was this like this window in history where there weren't really female artists writing their own music and wanting to be taken seriously for their own work. They were either performing.
I mean, I'm thinking like Madonna or Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I still feel like they didn't really have like the songwriter.
Yeah, just from the songwriting perspective.
Yeah.
Like, they were successful pop artists, but, and you know, the country genre has been around forever, but for somebody to cross from country to pop and to be writing their own music, I mean, like Shania Twain, you know, crossed from country to pop, but she didn't a lot of people, when Taylor Swift was crossing from country to pop, people were saying, oh, she's going to be a Shania Twain, she's not going to be successful, she should have just stuck with country. Yeah. And I think it's pretty momentous that this was the beginning of that transition for her, and she has been able to be successful with it. So that's another reason I gave it full points, but because I think this album speaks to Taylor Swift's musical legacy or history, if you will. And I think she's had a lot of success from what at the time was a very risky decision.
That's fair.
So she got pretty much kicked out of the country music scene after this album, and I think she's been okay since then. Whereas a lot of people, you know, were saying she shouldn't have taken that risk. Yeah. So, all right. So what is your final score?
My final score is 7 out of 10.
Wow. My final score is 8.5 out of 10.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Any final thoughts before we get into the lightning round?
I don't think so.
Okay. If you want to pull up a track list on your screen.
Got it.
Just in case. I'm going to ask you what's your favorite track and your least favorite track.
Okay. Well, my favorite Taylor Swift song is State of Grace, so I'll pick State of Grace. I'll say my least favorite song is probably The Last Time.
That, I think, is also my least favorite song is The Last Time. And my favorite track is really hard to pick because I feel like I kind of flip-flop around. Probably Red. Yeah, probably Red. I kind of fluctuate between State of Grace, Red, and Holy Ground. Those are kind of my three favorites, I guess. 22 was my favorite for a really long time, but I'm a little burnt out on it.
That's fair.
So I pretty much, I think I would say I consistently come back to Red as one of my favorites. I don't get as tired of that one. So, what lyrical or musical change would you make to the album?
Musical change, I would try to do something different with Sad, Beautiful, Tragic musically. Give it a different genre spin or a different musical composition, maybe change instruments out, something like that. I want it to be a little bit more far removed from I Almost Do in regards to like feel. So that I think that's what I would do, is try to do something different with Sad, Beautiful, Tragic.
You know, I think I would agree. I think they should have made it a piano ballad, because there's no piano ballad on this album.
Yeah,
and
that's
I feel
fair.
like the one piano song on the album,
they could have done something nice with piano, maybe some violin or something, some strings, a harp, include something like that. It would have been different enough, I think, at that point.
Cool. What track would you delete from the album?
The last time.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry.
Seriously, if it's your favorite, I'll send you a sticker. But I don't know anybody that would pick that as their favorite.
Yeah. Their
favorite song. Okay, what bonus track would you add to the album? And these are not the Taylor's version bonus tracks, because there's a whole lot of them.
I need to look at the
It's either
deluxe.
The Moment I Knew, Come Back, Be Here, Girl at Home, and then there's 3 demo recordings of Treacherous, Red, and State of Grace.
Probably Girl at Home. That one's fun.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. I like that one a lot. I think I would pick Girl at Home, although I think Come Back, Be Here is pretty good too. I think all 3 of those bonus tracks are good, but I think Girl at Home is my favorite, so I would add it.
That's fair.
Do you have a favorite music video?
I really liked the Begin Again music video. I know I didn't talk about it, but it's really like wholesome and cute.
Yeah.
You know, with like the coffee shop and just like the vibes are really nice.
I really wanted to buy it, and I don't know if you can anymore. You probably can't. But they make a teacup with a saucer that says Begin Again.
Oh, that's cute.
I really wanted it, but I think I couldn't afford it when I saw it on the website, or it was sold out. It was one or the other. It's either too expensive or sold out, which is like all of Taylor Swift's merch. Yeah. But
I would say Begin Again is my pick for favorite music video, though.
I think mine is We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together. I think that one's my favorite music video. Is there a music video for 22?
Yes.
That one might be. I haven't seen it in forever.
It's just like Taylor dancing around with like 3 or 4 other girls. They're just like chilling at the pool.
Oh, yeah.
And she's got like the black fedora on and the hipster glasses.
Yeah. It's not that one. She actually filmed that like at a party with her friends.
So okay. Well, then there you
go. So yeah, I think We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, which is fair. Which track would you like to see live? From someone who has seen them all live.
You've seen all of them? I was going to say.
Well, I saw the Red tour, so the ones that she performed live, I've seen them live.
Can I choose 2?
Okay. So you have to pick your first one first.
While State of Grace is my favorite song, and I have heard that one live, because I'm pretty sure she did it on the Eras tour, if I remember correctly.
No, she didn't.
She didn't?
I don't think so.
Well, then
there were a lot of songs from Red that they like previewed when they like opened the dancer opened the chest. Oh,
maybe that's what it was.
And it would play like part of it, and then they should.
So then, State of Grace, obviously, I'd like to hear that one.
That was her opener number live. It was really good.
So I think it would also be really nice to hear, like, you know how at concerts, like, when the artist needs to take a little bit of a break, so they have like acoustic hour and they do like 3 or 4 songs kind of like stripped down acoustic. Treacherous. I'd like to hear Treacherous.
That one was really good live.
In like a nice little acoustic moment.
So do you want to hear about that song? So when that song was live, so the stage, this is way off topic, but you have to listen to it because it's our podcast. So the stage had a walkway down the middle, and then it curved outward like an anchor, and then there was a bridge on either end of kind of the little platform that went back up to the stage,
the main stage.
Yes. And that's where I got to high five Taylor Swift.
That's so cool.
I know. I haven't washed this hand since then.
Oh, yay. That's a joke.
Yeah. I obviously have washed this hand. So the platform that was like the catwalk I'm not going to remember this completely accurately, but it raised up in the air. So it was kind of like a diving board. And so it would raise, I think actually, so like if this is the platform, this is the platform from going out. So like this is the main stage and this is the platform. It actually like lifted up and rotated this way. And so it went like all the way out in front of the crowd and she just stood on it and was like on the edge, like it's treacherous.
Yeah. This slope is treacherous.
Yeah, it was a treacherous slope, and that's what she stood on while she did it.
That's cool.
It was pretty cool. I can't remember if it just lifted up but I'm pretty sure it lifted and then rotated out like over the crowd.
That's so
and
cool.
The pit was between, like on either side of the walkway, the catwalk stage, and in between where like the bridge was.
Yeah.
So to go like kind of under the bridge to where the pit was, and that's where me and my brother got to hang out and watch the concert.
That's so cool.
And when she walked over the bridge, I like stuck my hand up like this and got a high five.
That's really cool.
It was fun. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like everyone there was like, oh, and Ed Sheeran opened for her.
Oh, perfect.
So, and then they sang
Everything
Has Changed together. So that was pretty good.
Do you have a pick?
I think now, especially, I would want to see Everything Has Changed.
Okay.
Because Ed Sheeran has gotten so big and Taylor Swift is huge. I would love to see them together in this, like in 2025, sing that song live together.
That's fair.
So I think I would pick that one. I would also kind of like to see The Last Time live because I'm like, what the heck were they thinking? Where is this Snow Patrol guy? And like, what the heck? Because I feel like it would just be weird to see live. And then I would be like, oh, that's why they recorded it. Because I guess they thought it was good, but no, I would pick Everything Has Changed.
That's fair.
How does this rank in your ranking? If you had, your tier list, how does this rank among other Taylor Swift albums for you?
It's my favorite one.
Top?
Yeah.
Number one?
S tier. Yes, number one.
Number one?
Number one.
Yeah, S tier. It's definitely S tier for me. I don't, it's hard to say. Speak Now and Red kind of flip-flop for number one.
I also really like the Fearless album too. That's probably my second favorite album, but
yeah.
I like this one.
Yeah.
This one's my favorite.
Alrighty. If you could have another artist cover a song from this album, which artist would you want and what song would you pick?
I have an answer.
Okay.
James Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Singing I Almost Do, I think would be really nice.
Ooh. That's a good answer.
I think that he would do a really nice job with that song.
Yeah. I think... I want to hear... I think I would pick... You know how Owl City sings with the girl?
Mm-hmm.
There's a girl that sings on his albums here and there. I want him and that female singer that sings with him to do The Last Time, to cover it.
Oh, okay. Because
their voices blend really well together, and I feel like he would do something a little different with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear another artist. I almost said Paramore do The Last Time, but I feel like they don't have as strong... I mean, sometimes they do, but the male vocals in Paramore's music is not always very forward. I was trying to think of another like pop punk that has like a good male and female blend for that song. I couldn't really think of anybody off the top of my head. I almost said Walk Off the Earth.
All Time Low has a female sometimes.
Very rarely though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Walk Off the Earth could cover it.
Yeah.
See how it does. But I feel like Owl City. I feel like he could find a way to like...
Owl City would make it more electronic.
Yeah, and make it more musically interesting too. Yeah. So, but then he is kind of a sad...
melancholic guy.
Yeah. I was going to say a sad boy, but I feel like that's a reference to something that I...
It's just a term now.
Yeah, I know.
Like, we're just sad boys.
Yeah. So, I didn't know if it was like from something.
I don't know.
But... Alrighty, that's all I have for lightning round questions. Do you have any final thoughts?
I've said it all.
Alrighty, well, thank you guys so much for listening. We're so glad you tuned in to check out this episode. We hope you had a good time because we know we did. If you want to, there are links to our show notes our Patreon socials, on our website at lineandmousepodcast.com. If you have an idea of something you'd like for us to review next, you can submit a submission form on our website as well, or you can leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube comments down below. We read all of those, so you can always suggest something there. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend. It just helps us kind of know what you guys like and what you don't like. It helps us reach other people to this with this podcast as well, and we appreciate any support you guys want to give. If you want to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform of choice, we'd also appreciate that. It just helps us reach as many people as we can. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will catch you in the next one.